Good evening. Nice to see everybody. I am Dr. Ellen Schmidt-Devlin. I am the executive director and the co-founder of the University of Oregon Sports Product Management program. So those of you that are from Oregon probably know the University of Oregon is in what city? Eugene, right? And here you are in Portland, right? So we do professional programs up here in Portland because that's where a lot of the companies are. Our program is a master's program. We actually have some of our master's students here today. If you come to Portland, it's an 18-month program. You learn everything about the product development life cycle. So you learn how to develop a brand, develop a product, and take that product to market. If you don't want to move to Portland, we offer the same program online. The number one thing that we teach our students is that this industry of sports and outdoor is all about collaboration. And that's what tonight is about. So we are so privileged to be here today with Basecamp Outdoor. And it's my privilege to be able to introduce to all of you Jenna Selmore. So ladies and gentlemen, Jenna.
Thank you. So I'm Jenna from Basecamp. If you don't know me, we are not just me, but Allie, my partner, and myself and our wonderful team run the community for the outdoor industry workforce. And we want to connect you in all capacities, whether that's to a job or to capital or to each other or to a journalist, whatever that looks like. It's so important to connect. We have a lot of resources for you. If you're not connected with us, there are some papers with some QR codes on them. Please sign up for our newsletters. Please join our community. It's on Facebook right now. It won't always be on Facebook, but it is right now because it helps out a lot. We're building a job board as well. And we have a premium version of our newsletter that will get first access to that job board. And we'll have some pretty premium opportunities for some jobs. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. What else do we have? Events like this. So please sign up so that you don't miss these opportunities to connect digitally and in person. I also wanted to congratulate everyone just for being here because networking sucks. It's very hard. But it's awesome that you came, like just showing up. It's scary and you're here and I want to congratulate you for that. Always remember that you're here to talk to strangers. You're not going to walk up to someone and they're going to be like, no, don't want a conversation. Walk up, ask them how they found out about the event, ask if you can join their conversation. They're going to say, yeah, like they're here to talk to you. So make sure you're doing that. Also, there are so many brands here incognito. They are wearing name tags just like you. They're hiring and they're walking amongst us. So make sure that you are being bold in starting those conversations. Right now, I would like to introduce you to Meredith Maurice. She is from the Oregon Outdoor Alliance, and she's going to tell you a little bit about that org, and they are making this possible today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith. Jenna, thank you for having us, and U of O, thank you for having us as well. We're very excited to be a part of this event and sponsoring this panel. I'm just going to share a little bit about me and, if you don't mind, my how I broke in story. And then I want to tell you a little bit about the Oregon Outdoor Alliance as well and how you can get involved. So I have been in the athletic and outdoor industry now for just over 10 years in talent acquisition and recruiting. And currently I work for Noto Group. We're an executive search firm here in Portland that specializes in this space. And I love what I do and all of the people that I've met. I'm super excited about this panel tonight because as a recruiter, I've seen how hard and intimidating it is to get into this industry. And even once you get in, how hard it is to navigate your career path through the industry as well. So there's no blueprint. There's no one size fits all. Everyone has their story. And it's because of, I think, like communities like Basecamp Outdoor and education partners like the University of Oregon who have dedicated programs that really bring some clarity to how you can start and also how you can grow a career in the outdoors. So my how I broke in story is a little uncommon, I feel like, these days. My first job was at Adidas here in Portland, and I feel like I was one of the lucky ones. I submitted a job application and the recruiter reviewed it and called me for an interview. And 3 weeks later, I was like, it was my first day on the job. Like, when does that ever happen? When does a real person look at job applications, and like when does the hiring process ever go that fast? So I feel very grateful just for the experience that I had, and took that with me as a recruiter just to make sure that that experience for everyone who was applying to jobs was as comfortable as possible too. And that first job led me to so many great people that I've met and so many great opportunities in the industry, including the volunteer role that I have now with the Oregon Outdoor Alliance, which is a statewide business alliance supporting the outdoor industry here in Oregon. So I'll quickly share just a little bit about OOA, and then I'll hand it back to Jenna and the panelists who you're like actually here to see. OOA was formed in 2014 by a small group of outdoor industry leaders in Bend, including one of the co-founders of Mountain Hardware and folks who'd been working with a lot of outdoor brands all over the Pacific Northwest. And they really wanted to help and support and grow the outdoor industry here in Oregon. It started with really casual get-togethers to share stories and advice, and I think to drink a couple beers as well. And it grew into a more professional statewide nonprofit with 3 chapters now here in Oregon, in Bend, in Portland, and in Southern Oregon, in the Ashland area. We now have over 300 outdoor companies and individual members here in the state. Our mission, very similar to Basecamp Outdoor, is to build a network of passionate outdoor enthusiasts here in Oregon, specifically through events, community, and partnerships. So Hydro Flask here, Gear Fix, and Roughwear have been some of our biggest supporters and members over the years, as well as a number of other organizations who see the value of the outdoor industry here in the state, like US Bank and Business Oregon, BBSI, and I'll say this one really quiet here in this room, but Oregon State University has also been a good partner of ours as well. If you are interested in learning more about OOA, I would definitely invite you out to one of our networking events. Our next one actually is here in town next Wednesday, the 26th, at Migration Brewing in North Portland. I think it starts at 5:30. And these are great events to meet people who are either working in the industry or are super passionate about the outdoors. They might just be there for the free drinks. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's just a great time with people here that are interested in kind of learning what's happening here in our local community and across the state as it relates to the outdoors. And so many stories from our members have found jobs in the industry coming to some of these events as well. So, and since this is a hiring event, I do want to mention, and it's not paid, but we do have board openings with Oregon Outdoor Alliance right now as well, if you're interested in getting some board experience and are super excited about the outdoor industry. It's a great opportunity. So if you're interested in that, definitely come find me or 2 gentlemen here in the back, Guy and Steven, who are also with the Portland chapter, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that. So in closing, OOA is just thrilled to be supporting tonight's panel. I'm excited to hear everyone's stories and how they broke into the industry. And I just want to say kudos to all of you for just showing up tonight. You seriously don't know who you might meet tonight who might be part of your career story. So yeah, thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, so how I broke in. You might recognize this feature from our socials or our newsletter if you're already connected there. We're doing it live. We've never done it before. It's probably going to go good, but we're gonna find out tonight. But essentially what we're gonna do is just like learn from our panelists who got sweet jobs, how they got those sweet jobs. And I think what we should do is hold all questions to the end, but if you have like a burning one, I'll probably let you ask it. So raise your hand. And I might be interjecting as well. If I'm like, ooh, I want them to describe something a little bit more in detail, I'll probably pitch in. So if something comes to mind, actually, I'm changing my mind on the spot, raise your hand and we'll see if we can find out more. So first panelist, Hanna. Hannah, who actually worked for Basecamp and was a little bit voluntold to do this. I gave her a pretty good offer, though, I feel like. And just has one of the best stories, so much moxie, bold and wonderful. So we can all learn a lot from Hannah.
Hey y'all, my name is Hanna Anderson. I formerly worked at Basecamp, but I now work with Oregon Wild, which is a conservation org based in Oregon, as well as the Outdoorist Oath, which is a nonprofit that focuses on DEI workshops in the outdoor industry. I think I can trace my story back just honestly a few years ago to one internship I had that really shaped like the rest of my career and gave me the skills that I needed to get all of my next jobs. And to say, like, I had interned before this program, but it was really my internship at America Votes that gave me the freedom and really the freedom to like own projects and to expand my skill set in ways that previous internships really hadn't. And so, with working with America Votes, I was living in DC, doing the commute, and I really had a lot of agency on picking which projects. And one of the great things about that internship, which I wish all internship programs included, was the ability for interns to choose a capstone project that they create with the intern manager and then see through to the end at the end of their internship. And I chose to do mine with the data program at America Votes. And I wanted to take the data team's knowledge and then translate it into social media because that's a form of communication that a lot of people my age use. So I wanted to kind of work between those two departments. And then the pandemic hit. And as you, did anybody else here, like education get affected by the pandemic? Mine definitely did. And I realized I was about to start actually a full-time position with America Votes. And I had realized, man, I can't do DC anymore. I can't do the swamp. I want to move back home, back west. And so I quit my job before really I even started. And then I went on like a 2-year series of just doing odd jobs, working in the outdoor industry, doing seasonal work.
How did you find those?
I found them through I found my first one through Coolworks, and then I like nannied, I worked in restaurants. So my like 2-year hiatus from like professional work was really spread out all over the place. And I was finishing up a contract with nannying down in Eugene, and I was thinking to myself, okay, it's time to get serious about my professional life because I can't keep doing this anymore. And so I started mass applying to jobs, which I'm sure a lot of people who have been in the job search are very familiar with. And I sent out lots of applications, wasn't getting replies, getting ghosted from a lot of them, despite having an extensive like intern experience. But you kept going. And then I found Basecamp Outdoor, very ironically, and realized that the outdoor industry was something I wanted to work in. It's a personal passion of mine to be in the outdoors, and I realized that I wanted to merge that with my professional career. And so I started stalking Basecamp. I wasn't very, I would say, comment heavy.
Lurker.
I was a lurker. But and I never really posted. I don't even think I posted an intro in Basecamp, but I always kept my eye on the page until I saw a Basecamp position open up. And I was like, I don't know how qualified I am for this, but I'm going to apply to it anyway. And when looking through the application, I realized, Basecamp is an organization I'm really passionate about. I've always been really passionate about equity in the workforce, and I might as well apply, right? So when it came down to the interview, and I think that's where it really melded for me that this is going to be a really great position. And I just spoke my truth and I said, hey, this is why I'm really passionate about your job. I don't have a ton of experience, but I can, show you a couple of projects I worked on. I referenced my previous intern experience with that social media campaign they ran with America Votes. And you know what? They hired me, which took me a little bit by surprise, but it was a great opportunity. And working under Ali and Jenna was a great learning opportunity. They gave me a lot of freedom to grow in skills that I didn't have before and a lot of guidance. And I'm really appreciative of that experience. And so that was a contract 1099 position part-time. And so I was still kind of looking for that like full-time job or a like part-time position that could fill in the hours that Basecamp didn't. And guess where I looked? I looked at Basecamp, and sure enough, an Oregon Wild position popped up, and that kind of melded my background in policy work with social media and marketing. And I applied to that, and thanks to like all the work I had done during my contract position with Basecamp, I had built up quite a portfolio, and so I was able to nail that job. And kind of doing the funky contractor thing, I had a lot of weird hours, so I was looking for one more contract. So by this time, I had a portfolio built up from Oregon Wild and Basecamp and from my
How did you show
internship.
that portfolio? Like when you applied for a job, do you have a website, or how did you actually physically get it in front of people?
I didn't have a website, but I did link to every single Instagram or every single social media that I had run before and said, hey, I posted all of the content from these date ranges. Here it is. It's posted, it's live, and you can see it in real time. And that's what I submitted to my last contract gig, which I just got, which is working with the Outdoorist Oath, which I also found on Basecamp. So online resources are a really great way of finding potential jobs, and you should definitely just apply to things, even if you don't think you're 100% qualified.
Especially if you're 100% qualified, if you have every single qualification, you're so overqualified, and you shouldn't be working there, and they're not going to hire you anyway. So I like to say 50 to 75% if you can see yourself in there. And then if you are like, oh, 25%, I don't have it, make a plan. Reach those skills, put in your cover letter. I don't know this yet, but I want to, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to do it. As someone that's a lifelong learner, that gets attention.
Yeah, I guess just to like finish up, I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give anybody that's currently job seeking is to be a little picky with like who you apply to, because your passion for the organization will definitely come out in your cover letter, and it will make up for the lack of skills or experience that your resume might have holes in. Because a lot of organizations, and working through Basecamp and like seeing what employers are saying, and also now having been on the employer side for Oregon Wild, passion for the mission of that organization is going to be crucial. Like, people will hire you for your love of the organization and for your zest for wanting to learn over somebody who's very, very qualified who may not also have that passion.
I would agree. When I'm hiring for Basecamp, I have a question that says, why do you want to work for Basecamp? And that's actually the first thing I looked at when I'm hiring. Because like you don't have to know my organization, but like if you apply and literally have never been to our website and don't know what we do, probably not going to hire you, right? Like I want you to know that your values are our values, and that we can serve you as much as you're serving us. It's an equal and negotiable relationship. So I want you to want this job and know that you're a good fit off the bat. So definitely target those organizations. Totally agree. Thank you, Hannah. Are there any questions for Hannah? Cool. All right. Next up.
Cool. What's up, guys? I'm Tucker White. I graduated from the SPM program here just like a month ago-ish, something like that. But I work for Smith Optics. I'm the goggle product manager there. Currently started that job in August, and it's been awesome so far. Just kind of a bit about me, a little background and my story. I might actually stand. I kind of don't like sitting and talking. I like to move around a little bit, but done a lot of presentations in this room, as some of you might be familiar with. But originally, I'm from Vermont, born and raised. Was ingrained in outdoor sports from a very, very young age, and that's always been, a huge passion of mine, which I'm sure is pretty much the same for everybody in this room. That's why you're here. That's why you want to get into this industry, and that's the key that we'll get to. A lot of people have it, but how you showcase that, I think, is super, super important. So for me, I went to college. I was an econ major. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Econ's kind of whatever. Like, are you going to go into finance? What are you going to do? So I taught math for a little bit, which was definitely not the right thing for me. But for the time, it was it was safe and it was easy, and I jumped into that. But then I found out very quickly that was not what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. So, kind of transitioned.
What made you know that?
I was working at a tiny little private school in like Western Connecticut, and there was nobody around and nobody my age, and
Okay.
a lot of kids don't like math, which is also a pretty big piece. So, maybe later in life we'll get back to it, but I think for right now it just wasn't the right thing. And there was nothing that like drove me in it. I wasn't waking up every day excited to go to work. I was waking up every day like, fuck, I gotta go teach these kids some more math because they don't care. But anyway, that's a totally different tangent. So from there, I decided, okay, how can I transition? Similarly, I wanted to move home back to Vermont, and did so. Ended up working for a small creative agency called Select Design in Vermont, where I did kind of sales, marketing, product development for them, for brands kind of.
Sorry, how did you get that job with like your math background?
I knew a lot of people who worked there.
Okay, that's the tip right there.
I had some. The owners are people that I know, like I grew up with their kids, and reached out via that, and some other people that I know who worked there. That interview process did take forever, though. It was very much a squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of situation. I'd reached out for probably like 6 months to a year before I actually got an interview or got anything back.
That's normal.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, like squeaky wheels always get the grease.
These are people I know personally, so I did take that a little bit personally, but we got past it and we moved on. I think what enabled me to get that job was just following up and having conversations with people in the building, surrounding people who worked for brands that they worked with, kind of attacking them from all angles. I think is an important thing to do. So did that for 4 or 5 years ish. Worked with a ton of different brands, got a lot of really good experience, working with vendors, suppliers, both domestic and international, and just kind of working with different teams, and seeing how different teams work, how they interact with each other, and got, I think, a lot of good experience there. At the end of the day, it wasn't the right thing for me. We were making tchotchkes that people are giving out at events. There's a lot of POP display, that kind of stuff, which again didn't really drive me. So it's like, okay, where can I go now? And this definitely isn't the end of the road. So did a lot of looking. I'd always kind of wanted to move west, and was trying to figure out, how do I marry these things up together? So actually my dad sent me an email saying, hey, you should check out this University of Oregon program. And I did. And I said, I don't know. I don't want to. It's a commitment. It costs money. It's moving across the country. It's an unknown, and makes you a little bit vulnerable for sure. But a year later, kind of started thinking about it again. This was around toward the end of COVID times a little bit, but had been cooped up for a bit, and was like, I really need to make a move now. It's time. So I ended up applying to the program, utilizing the experience that I had at the previous job. For those of you who are in SPM now, or have applied, that there's like a job or work sample that's required, which I think is the most important part of the application for people who may be applying to the program. So focus on that. But utilized some of that experience, reached out to the folks here, ended up getting in, moving out here, and went through the program. Got a lot of really good experience meeting with different folks who are faculty, also students as well. The faculty at this program has a wealth of knowledge from different areas, different, all kind of the same industry, but they come at it from different angles. So they all worked kind of in different parts. So definitely take from them what you can. Don't be afraid to reach out to those people, especially if you are a student. Like, they're there to help you for sure. So take advantage of them. And through that program, that is how I kind of got linked up with Smith. I'd applied to jobs at Smith 5 years ago. Number of jobs, just crickets, nothing. Here I am, like, oh, I've, skied and biked my whole life. Like, why don't people like me? But that's just not how it is. It's not a popularity contest. It's about learning, meeting people, learning new things, showing that you're learning and you're willing to kind of put yourself out there and, better yourself to then contribute to that organization. So for me, that was coming to the SPM program. Ended up meeting my direct boss, whose name is also Tucker, through the SPM program.
How through the SPM program, like a hiring event or?
No, he just came to Innovation Lab, I think.
You just like rolled up one day and you're like, hey, Tucker.
He came to like talk to us about kind of similar to this, like his experience.
Oh, cool. Okay.
With SPM and then like getting the job at Smith and where he was now. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that he said that he was hiring for anything at that time. I think it was more just like a general. And then I think I reached out to somebody at SPM for his email. I may have DM'd him on Instagram. I don't remember, but it was end up just
those are very different.
Just I think it was an email.
It's completely legit to use social media to reach out. I do it all the time. It's very legitimate.
I think you get a vibe for that person and what they might be comfortable with if you meet somebody in person. So I ended up just having a follow-up call with him. He was in the airport going to Austria to visit a supplier, and just a general check-in, not like, hey, I want a job. It was more like, hey, I'm a student, we met the other day, would love to just pick your brain a little bit. Like, we seem like pretty like-minded people. Also, like, I'm new to Portland, let's be friends kind of thing. But, pretty general, definitely more targeted about Smith. And we just had a chat for, 30, 45 minutes-ish before he had to get on the plane. Went really well. Ended up then looking at the Smith website, seeing, oh, this guy just got promoted and he's hiring for his old position. Like, it was very serendipitous, honestly, but like timing is everything in these situations, and you have to be ready to jump on those things regardless of kind of what else is going on in your life. That's, I think key number 2, if we're adding things up, but just being ready to take advantage of opportunities as they're presented to you is a huge thing. I then reach out to him probably a week or 2 later, just like, hey, just want to let you know I put in this application, really appreciated like chatting with you, blah, 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 blah. And then just waited for a little bit. And he ended up reaching back out to me directly. A little bit of a special situation because I was still in grad school at the time. And we had coffee, had a chat, and then ended up going through the interview process at Smith, which was pretty extensive. I think it took a little over a month. I had like 5 or 6 interviews. And met with a lot of people, which was all good. I love all my coworkers, and so you get to chat with people who are like-minded like you. So that's like the connection that you need to make that personal connection with the people at the companies that you want to work for. Even if you don't want to work for their company, you never know where that person's going to go eventually at events like this. Say what's up to people. Like was said earlier, they're here to talk to people too. So they're not just going to like cold shoulder you, at least hopefully not. And if they do, so what? Move on to the next person. Like, that's their loss, honestly. So yeah, don't be afraid to have some confidence and just get in somebody's face a little bit. Obviously there's limits to that, but I think again, that squeaky wheel does get the grease. It's such a, what's the word for that?
I think what you're saying is it's like truism. Yes, thank you. It's a truism.
That wasn't the word I was thinking of, but I was thinking of cliche.
Okay, yes.
But I think that's kind of super important. Networking sucks, but it is what you have to do to meet people. And honestly, it's really, really hard to get jobs if you don't know people, because there is so many people out there that are interested in the industry, have some passion, So just having that isn't really enough. So would encourage you to reach out to people on LinkedIn. People like to talk about themselves. So just reach out, ask them some questions about themselves, ask them, their story, how they got to where they are, do a little research on them, pull something, don't be too creepy about it, but like pull some things, from their LinkedIn of like, hey, like I can relate this to something that I do. Wanted to ask you a question about it. Like, how did you do that? Things of that nature, just to get them engaged a little bit, get a little bit of hook. I think those are super beneficial. I can't tell you how many conversations I had with just like randos on LinkedIn that, I found either they went to SPM program or somehow adjacent to that, and just DM them like, hey, would like to learn a little bit about your experience, what you do. I think that's also just learning what people do is pretty important in this industry, especially depending on what company you go to. They call things by different names, so it can be often hard to tell, okay, what does this person actually do on a daily basis, and is that something that I want to do? So yeah, another piece there. Anything else? I think I'm good.
You're great.
Yeah.
You're really good at networking, Tucker. We have a question from your colleague.
Yeah, Sid, go ahead. Thank you.
Too bogged down in work or
For sure. I think it's a really, really good question. Sydney Kirby, everybody. She's our snow marketing manager. Yeah, so that was definitely kind of a hinging point of getting the job and also being willing to apply to the job, because I was like, hey, I've put in, $60,000 into this program. I don't want to walk away without a degree, but I also really, really want this job. It's exactly what I've been looking for. And to walk away and not have even tried, I know that I would kick myself forever. So to me, just applying was a no-brainer, but then how do I pitch that and make it actually real, that I can do these things? Because for the last 6-8 months, I was a full-time student and I worked full-time, and it was a lot for sure. But that's where that having coffee with Tucker came into play. He reached out to me and was like, hey, let's just have a chat. Sat down with him, and just talked through. He was like, hey, I hope like this is going to be, more work than you've probably ever done in your life between these two things, and I want to understand from you like how you plan on working through that. And I had already had some conversations with the folks here at SPM of, hey, I'm looking at this job. I don't really know how it's going to go, obviously, but I want to set myself up for success. So I think planning ahead for that, and at least just letting people know that, hey, I may need to adjust the way I'm doing school, was a really big key for me. Just getting them to know that as soon as possible so that they could plan for it as well. But then also just time management for myself. And that's kind of how I build it to Tucker for sure was, I'm historically not the best time manager in the world, but I am able to kind of compartmentalize those things and prioritize. For me, the job always had to come first. School was super important, and I really wanted that degree, but it had to be secondary once somebody is paying me to do a job. So that's kind of how I build it to him. Like, hey, work comes first. School is somewhat secondary here, but also know that there are going to be times where I'm going to have to take some time to do things that are important for school, for my degree. And as long as we can work together on that, I think we're not going to have any problems here. I think I did have the benefit of Tucker had also done the SPM program, so he understood exactly what I was going to be doing and the workload that was on my plate, which I think for better or for worse, right? Because he knew that there was a lot on my plate, but made the conversation easier when I had to be like, I have to go give this capstone presentation or whatever it is. Like, he knows what that means, and it doesn't have to be like a long drawn out conversation. But so that is to say, I think just having a conversation about it, where you can. Obviously, if you're someone who's currently working and you're looking to put in time outside of your current work, I think just finding time to like schedule yourself for it is actually a great way to do it. I did that with school a lot. I would go to work till 5 or whatever, and then I had in my calendar, because I have to do this or else I won't do it. I need to like schedule my time. Afterwards would be doing school for either 2 to 3 hours after, depending on the day. Some days, if there was night class, then I'm coming directly from the office to night class, or I'm going home, and that's when I'm working on reading whatever the assignments are. And yeah, it's a lot of time, big time commitment, but I think it was worth it. And that's kind of the only way that you're going to get where you're going, is put your nose to the grindstone and get through it. Kind of sucks to say, and then it's not like the best advice in the world, but it's sometimes you just have to do what you have to do, but also know that pain is temporary. Like, it's going to end in one way or the other. Maybe you crash and burn and it fails. That'll happen. You learn something from it. Or maybe you end up with something new that is better than what you had before, and you're super happy you did it. Then you learn something there too. I mean, I'm a big fan of, you learn something from a failure or a success, and as long as you put in the effort, you won't be disappointed. I hope that sort of answers your question, Sid.
Love that. Thank you so much. Tell us your story.
I can't believe I have to follow you up working at Smith. So my name is Holly. I also graduated from the SPM in 2021. So I was actually fortunate to have Tucker as a student, as I was a TA with the SPM program up until this last year. And I work for Columbia Sportswear in our product testing team, which supports all of the brands in our portfolio. So Sorel, Mountain Hardwear, Columbia, and Prana, which is super cool. And I feel fortunate every single day that I get to do. My story isn't, I'm going to truncate my story a little bit, but my story with product began in retail. I was a retail manager at Title IX in the Pearl District for 3 years. It was at the time one of the A volume stores. And I loved product and I loved the consumer. And after doing retail for 3 years, I was like, I need to find something new. It was time to move on. And I was so fortunate to have one of my customers. Her name is Kathy Longholland. She works in this program, and she said, hey, have you thought about going to grad school and doing the SPM program? So I was like, no, what is that? And I came and I met Ellen and the rest of the faculty here, and I got to sit in on some courses. And so I took a dive and I decided to do SPM, and it was probably the best decision of my life, because it took what I already loved so much, which was product and the consumer, and it just melded both of those things, and I learned it in a very end-to-end way. And I'm going to leave it at that. And if you have any questions about the SPM, please ask Tucker or I, because we love the program, obviously. So I loved it so much, I stayed for a really long time, and I helped out. And after I graduated, it was a really rough job market time, actually. And so I did what every SPM grad probably did, which was make a huge Airtable spreadsheet with multiple tabs and apply to as many jobs as possible. Hundreds, probably. And in that time, I also reached out to a lot of recruiters. A lot of recruiters.
Where did you find recruiters?
So SPM held a bunch of networking events with our recruiters. Mathis Potestio, I'll name a few of them because they're very helpful. Mathis and Potestio, 52 Limited, and then 24/7. And those are some of the recruiting agencies. And so I reached out to a lot of them on LinkedIn, and I reached out to a lot of them personally after connecting with them on LinkedIn. I made sure that I was looking at the different jobs. And then I just mass applied, and let them know that I was interested in some specific roles. And they would, let's see, sorry. So after they knew I was interested, I got a lot of emails about different roles coming available. And so I would just apply for them.
Like proactively, the recruiters would be like, "Hey, Holly, you
they
might
would.
want this." Okay,
Yes.
so that's an amazing tip. If a recruiter knows what you can do, they might start sending you inbound opportunities.
Yes, definitely. So after I told them what I was interested in, they would send me different jobs in the industry. I was specific to companies I wanted to work for, though I honestly wasn't very picky. I was doing like 4 different jobs, including working for SPM at the time. And then a job rolled past my desk. It wasn't something I wanted. It was like a 3-month, very temporary position at Columbia in their testing team. Wasn't interested in testing. Didn't know why the recruiter sent it to me. But she was like, "This might be something for you." And so I applied for it thinking, well, at least I'll get some good interview experience, because you need interview experience. So they interviewed me right away, and in the interview expressed that they needed someone immediately. So it was very like timing is everything kind of situation. And I had been testing as a product tester for Lululemon during this time. And so I knew a little bit about some of the platforms they used. I took my knowledge with SPM about our end-to-end product creation and where testing fit in. So I made sure that I was strong in all of my product testing knowledge to the best of my ability. And I actually asked them if they were going to hire me in the interview because they seemed desperate. And they were like, hold on, we'll get back to you. And they were pretty cool people, and so I knew I could be forward with them like that. And they hired me, and I feel very fortunate because it's a team that I absolutely love, and I get to do really fun things, including this event, and to tell you about it.
I love that. Are there questions for Holly? Are there questions for anyone on the panel, or like, no, we don't have any questions today? Sure.
I understand the first person. I think I understand your role, but the other two I don't understand what you guys do.
Yeah, I'm the goggle product line manager for Smith. So I do all the product development for all goggles, bike, and snow for globally.
So you're like a designer?
I'm more like classically what you would call a developer. So I work with all of the factories, domestic. Smith, for those who don't know, who most people don't, that Smith makes like 70% of our goggles domestically in Utah. But working with vendors in Asia and the US and in Europe as well to get all the product developed. So all the different parts, creating bombs, bills of materials, working on, margin analysis for how that all looks, how it's going to impact the company, how are we going to get this stuff, on time, on design, all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think what else do I do. I do a lot of color matching. But essentially, I work through the whole process from creating a line of, these are the products and colorways and everything, working with the design team to put that together, through actually creating it and bringing it to the market. And that's kind of where I leave it and then move on to the next season.
I also work within the product team. So when I was in retail, I worked at the very end of the product creation process, and now I'm working at the very beginning of the product creation process. So my team gets to work with all different teams, including innovation. So we sit in literally the middle of our footwear building, and we do lab testing for innovation. We do testing for like pre-line products. So anything that they need, like needs to be impacted, or is this going to be waterproof materials? We do things like that. And then further down in product creation, we do wear testing and we do fit testing. So in footwear, and then wear testing in apparel.
What's up?
Question for Holly, but I'll pose it to anyone who can answer it. I'm just interested in your experience with the recruiters. If you could talk a little bit more in detail about what that experience was like.
I worked with a lot of recruiters. My suggestion is to, I came at it with a lot. So I tried to get in touch with as many of the recruiters that I could that had positions open that I was really interested in. And then I made personal connections with them as best that I could. So reaching out on LinkedIn, making sure I had meetings with them, asking them for feedback on my portfolio and asking them for feedback on my resume. Pretty much it. I actually am still in touch with a lot of them. And I send people to them sometimes too. Some of it just depends on who, like the smaller companies like Mathis and Potestio I found was really personal with me. So if you can find recruiters like that, and 52 Limited, if they know what you're looking for and they're a smaller firm that you can make personal connections with, I would suggest that. 24/7 is awesome because they have such a large breadth of positions, especially with Nike and Adidas. But they're harder to get a hold of.
Right here in the vest.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm from the Eugene campus. I'm doing my MBA at Oregon, Go Ducks. I was curious, what is something from your studies that you're grateful for that you've brought into kind of sports product?
Sure, I can go first. Specifically from our studies, I think understanding of global supply chains a little bit. Super important part of what I do is understanding how the different players work together, both as companies, but also like politically, and how do people who work in Korea versus Vietnam versus Taiwan, how do they interact with each other? Because there can be some intricacies there, and I think learnings in the program of being cognizant of those cultural differences and how you can kind of bridge that gap as somebody who really has no real experience. I've never been to Asia, not yet, and how do you like relate to those folks who are working in factories, or they're in management of a large corporation that is making product for you. I think that's probably the key takeaway. And then I would just say the relationships, specifically with the professors, teachers, that you can reach out to and get information from. They can tell you when you're wrong, without it being like a softer landing for sure. So yeah.
I'm trying to think to make it like concise enough, because to be honest with you, I use everything we've learned in the program almost every day. On a big scale, since we get an end-to-end product creation view, I'm bringing to meetings like the voice of the consumer as much as possible. I'm bringing my knowledge of sourcing and how to talk to that team. I'm bringing my knowledge of costing to be able to ask relevant questions in the meetings so that we can make the best product that we possibly can.
I guess the one thing that I would add is I can't just make product for me, I think is huge. There's a lot greater global market out there that's trying to buy ski and bike goggles, and it's not just people like me. So being able to be cognizant of what the mass market looks like, super important and really, really hard sometimes.
Did you have a question still? Okay.
I had a question. This is for Holly. I know, right? Columbia is kind of a big company, Holly. Like, is there ever like a situation where like an SPM person might find like a good point of contact at Columbia Sportswear or anything like that, or like find themselves getting helped by Columbia Sportswear SPM alumni?
That was a leading question. We have a group on campus for SPM alumni. So if you work at Columbia, we take you into our fold. And I just had lunch with this lovely gentleman this week or last week. Is that where you're going at? We also have, like greater networking. Columbia is really great at networking events, especially in the summertime. We have something called a partio. It's really great. You can meet people from other departments that you would never ever interact with otherwise. Like I have a lot of folks that I've met in finance or customs or other places where I don't necessarily touch. So if you have an interest or something sparks a passion in another part of the company, it's easy to connect with people. I also think that at Columbia, I can't speak for other places, but Columbia is really good. If you are interested in something and you want to connect and you just send them a Teams message, they're so helpful and they really are excited to meet with you. So
that's wicked. Cardio? That's cool. That's partio. Yeah, that's like a really good recruitment marketing thing that they've never taught. I've never heard that. Partio and pat. Yeah, it makes sense. There's one more question before we go. Oh, I'll get to you as well. We'll do 2 more questions.
You are very much in consumer-centric roles. You get to work with people on a day-to-day basis, and you're working with consumers in different areas that you may not be familiar with or that you're extremely familiar with. When you go and meet with hiring managers and hiring committees where you're meeting with people not only from like the HR side, but from like the hiring manager brand side, how do you sort of tailor you and your skill sets to each of those individuals?
Does anyone want to
take that one on? That's a really good. That's a really hard question and a really good question. For me, when I was reaching out and like, it was like a case by case thing. So if I'm really interested in consumer insights research, and so testing was a really good fit at the end of the day. If I was applying to that type of a role, I would take what experience I had and I would put it into the resume in that way, and then I'd bounce it off a colleague of mine like Tucker or maybe Ellen or somebody in my network to see if I was tracking.
Yeah, I think just doing background research, knowing your audience a little bit, whether that's on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever it may be, you can glean a little bit of personal detail on folks and try to understand what might drive them. I think whether you're meeting with somebody in HR is going to be very different than meeting somebody in product. But they're probably still in that industry because they have that similar interest. At least you would hope so. But I think just lead with who you are and your passion, and that will kind of guide the conversation no matter what. Yeah, I guess that's what I would say.
I also would like to caution people against the phrase "pick your brain." It infuriates me, and many people won't want to do it. But going to them and saying like, "I have this specific question, and I'm interested in this, and here's who I am, and here's why I want to talk to you," you'll get a lot of meetings. But if you're just like, "Hey, I want to learn more about your company. Can I pick your brain?" It just feels like you haven't done that background research, which is super important. What I like to do too is just figure out who's in the position I want to talk to, Google them. If they've done a podcast, that's the best. Or if they've been quoted in an article, but podcasts are the best. Listen to a little bit about them, learn about them, see where there might be some commonality, and then reach out with that, or just follow their content. LinkedIn is the one that I reference most, but you can do this on Instagram, Reddit, wherever, and learn a little bit about them, and maybe just like drop some comments as the initial interaction. Get on their radar a little bit before you even reach out, and then they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, I recognize this person. Let me answer them," type thing. So yeah, really, humanity is a big part of hiring.
Yeah, I would also say, pick what industry you want to be in and go niche. And if it's doesn't come natural to you to speak with like a hiring manager or somebody in HR or somebody in the position that you want, then it might not be a good fit for you. I can speak from personal experience. I almost took a job with the DNC back when I lived in DC, and it was kind of like a jarring moment where I'm like, wow, like this conversation's going okay, but it's kind of forced and it doesn't really feel like me. And I ultimately turned down that job because I think it just wasn't going to be a good fit. And so when you are looking at companies to approach, be picky. It's okay to like, the job needs to suit you as much as you can perform the job.
Yeah. We have one more question.
Or go along with like corporate sustainability measures for companies and how corporations are being, trying to be more aligned with climate action goals and sustainable development goals. I don't know if that was a question, but somewhere in there was a question.
Are you looking for a role in sustainability, or are you more wondering how these companies?
I'm curious, how the companies integrate sustainability, or if as a person applying for a job, is that something that, because I think I'm learning, at least within my field, is that like young people are caring a lot more about the companies and what they're doing.
Sure.
Companies are also now having to be more accountable, more transparent, and now there's like corporate sustainability reporting in addition to financial reporting. So things like that. I don't know where the question was, but just do you have like thoughts on that as in your roles, and do you get to like work with people who might be doing sustainability within the company?
Yes. Sustainability is huge, especially consumers are always asking about it. We hear that from our buyers, key account buyers that we have in the office to show new product lines to, what's new, how are you bringing more sustainable product? I make plastic things you put on your face. So that's pretty hard to jump out of your chair and say that's being sustainable. But how can you do it on the margin? And people are really interested to know, how are you bringing in sustainable plastics, polycarbonate, whatever, packaging. Packaging is a huge piece, at least for us, that we've worked on for sustainability wise. How do we get rid of all the plastic pieces of our packaging, which we have done in the last year, and that was a huge project for us. And bringing it all into FSC certified recyclable paper products instead of plastic packaging that goes inside outside of the lens, all that kind of stuff. So definitely very top of mind, something that we're actively pursuing, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, of how can we improve. I was recently challenged by a buyer of, hey, there's a couple brands out there that are making recycled plastics to build their goggle frames. You guys aren't doing that. Like, why not? And to be super frank, we're working on it for sure. But it's a huge challenge. Those substrates just don't necessarily react as well when they're from a recycled material. Also, for us, we make most of our goggles onshore. If we're shipping in recycled plastics from Asia, that completely negates any sustainable story that we can tell. So I think at least the folks that I work with, we're not trying to greenwash anything. We're really driven to lower our carbon footprint in any way that we can, but we want to do it in the right way, not just to appease those consumers. Because as you say, those, the younger folks, they're asking for it. It's super duper important. And if you're not getting better in that realm as a company, you're dead. I guess that's.
I would encourage you to ask that in any interview, since it's important to you. And I would also maybe encourage you, since you seem to have expertise in that area, maybe, or at least interest, that's a cover letter thing as well. Like I've noticed this about your website. I have this question. It's one of those things that shows you've done your research and that your values are in line with sustainability. And right now, most hiring managers are going to be piqued by that. Somebody that cares about that and might be looking out for that in their role, even if it's not directly correlated, I think that would be something that piqued interest. So we are over the time limit and I am super hungry. So we are going to end here. I did want to say thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for listening and thank you for coming.